a British citizen is kidnapped in Dubai, believed to be dead. The suspects? Intelligence agents from Iran. Now his wife, in her first television interview, says British authorities are also responsible.
I do blame UK government. They put Abbas and many other people's life in danger.
So why did the British government hand over his private documents to a hardline regime in Iran?
He was afraid of being killed.
He said that to you?
Yes. Oh, yes, he was afraid of his life.
Tonight on Panorama, a secret deal that raises serious questions that go right to the heart of our government.
Someone somewhere should be saying to us, well, I made this decision because. There should be some sort of accountability.
I think that this is sufficiently serious for the Home Secretary to direct her personal attention to it.
Dubai, a glittering Middle Eastern hub for business and tourism. It's the playground of the rich and famous, but there's another side to this place. One evening last June, a businessman leaves his office to go home. Abbas+Yazdi is a British citizen born in Iran. In the car park, people are waiting. He's bundled into his own car, then driven to a nearby port and put on a boat to Iran. For 8 months, his wife has been trying to find out what happened to her husband.
Everything was so dark and scary. My husband was abducted. I didn't know what happened to him. I didn't know what's going on.
Yezdi wants to know why the British Serious Fraud Office passed her husband's private business records to the Iranian state.
This is unbelievable because Abbas warned them that they're putting his life in danger by passing all this information to Iran.
Mrs. Yazdi's been told by the British Foreign Office they believe her husband is dead, but no one knows for sure.
It's not only me, it's kids also, and I can't tell them if Abbas is, alive. I can't tell them he's dead, because I don't believe it. Your friends, they're gonna help you, okay?
After he disappeared, Mr. Yazdi's family were given police protection in Britain. But now they're back in Dubai. Arad and Ayla are trying to adjust to life without their father.
Every Friday or Saturday, he would take me and Arad to the movies. Miss him.
I know, it's hard.
Last month, 3 Iranians were arrested in Dubai in connection with Mr. Yazdi's abduction. A former director of public prosecutions had previously warned the Serious Fraud Office helping Iran could put lives at risk.
The Iranian state is known for its complete contempt for the rule of law, for engaging in routine acts of torture, arbitrary executions, and an utter disregard for human rights. And it seemed extraordinary that a British prosecuting authority should be cooperating with an Iranian law enforcement authority in any way, but particularly in connection with a British citizen, and doing that behind his back.
Abbas+Yazdi grew up during Iran's Islamic Revolution, which brought the Ayatollahs to power. He went to school with children from influential families, among them the son of this man, Ali Akbar Rafsanjani, who became president and a powerful political player. Mehdi Rafsanjani would become a government official and wealthy businessman. Abbas+Yazdi was his friend.
They used to be classmates. They were very, very close to each other. Still, up to now, they are friends.
Aged 24, Abbas+Yazdi was imprisoned. His family say he was a victim of political infighting in Iran between more moderate reformists like his friend's father, President Rafsanjani, and the hardliners.
Why he was in prison? Because he was a close friend to Mehdi, and every time they wanted to put pressure onto Mehdi's family. It was Abbas being hostage, always like a hostage.
Abbas+Yazdi was in solitary confinement for 6 months, tortured and made to confess to false charges.
One of the things they said to him, and he had to confess, was spying for UK. And they gave him death penalty.
Some of Mr. Yazdi's influential friends in Iran helped him get temporary leave from prison. He fled abroad, like many others.
This political rivalry between moderates and hardliners has often spilt out and involved retribution and various punitive measures taken by one camp against the other at various points. And I think it's gone well beyond the court system, the judicial system.
The Yazdis came to London in the 90s and made their home in wealthy Knightsbridge. They had their children here, and Abbas+Yazdi established a business consultancy.
He set up his business and everything necessary to start a new life in a new country. But it wasn't easy, it was very difficult.
In 2003, the Serious Fraud Office came calling. They raided Abbas+Yazdi's office, took away copies of confidential material from his computers. It was at the request of the Norwegian authorities. They were interested in Mr. Yazdi's business dealings in Iran.
I think the best way to describe him would be that he's a sort of fixer. And there's no doubt that at some time in the past, in 2003, the Norwegian prosecuting authorities had taken an interest in a company with which he was associated.
In Norway, they were investigating a deal between their state energy company, Statoil, and the Iranians to develop a gas field off southern Iran. Fraud investigators here wanted to know if Mehdi Rafsanjani, then an official in Iran's national oil and gas company, was getting a kickback of millions of dollars. And if Abbas+Yazdi, whose company was involved in the deal, was acting as a frontman for his old friend. Cato Schatz was Mr. Yazdi's lawyer in the corruption investigation.
The only thing that Abbas+Yazdi was very keen to stress was that he had no part in it and he had no knowledge of what was really the core of the matter.
Is it fair to say that Mr. Yazdi had a reputation as a bit of a fixer, a man who perhaps dabbled in a shady world?
I have absolutely no indication in that respect.
A year later, Norway's corruption investigation into Statoil's deal in Iran was concluded.
Statoil paid a fine of 20 million kroner. That's nearly £2 million. It was the largest fine in any corruption case in Norway at that time. But the case was settled and the company admitted no liability.
The Norwegian authorities brought no charges against either Mr. Yazdi or his old friend Mehdi Rafsanjani.
Both the British and the Norwegian authorities dropped any case against him.
So Mr. Yazdi was completely exonerated?
Yes, 100%.
Abbas+Yazdi moved his family to Dubai. Many expatriate Iranians live here and do business with Iran.
And what was your husband doing in Dubai?
He has a general trading company.
And did he do business with Iran still? Did he have contacts and friends there?
He has friends there, of course, but he didn't do any business with government in Iran.
Iran's moderates were replaced in 2005 by a hard-line government under President Ahmadinejad.
The rise of this new Iranian faction means that new deals are being re-examined, old deals are being annulled, cancelled, shaken up.
And one such deal the new regime reneged on was a multi-billion-dollar gas contract with Crescent Petroleum based near Dubai. It had been signed by the previous Iranian government.
Very big economic deals over that period, including deals on the size of the Crescent deal, did fall prey to political rivalries. They fell victim to higher-level political machinations.
Mr. Yazdi and Crescent both said after initial contacts he wasn't involved in the deal. But years later, he'd be dragged into a legal battle over it. The hardliners, led by Ahmadinejad, were soon creating waves internationally, denying the Holocaust, enriching uranium the West feared for the bomb. Then in 2007, the Iranian Navy seized British sailors in the Gulf. Ahmadinejad paraded them on television before releasing them.
And the seizure of British sailors, I think, was a crisis point for the UK-Iran relationship. It made it very clear that the security establishment within Iran was willing to act quite recklessly, and that the relationship no longer had many of the same checks and balances that it may have had only 5 or 6 years previously.
Despite this, just a month later, the British government was dealing with Iran behind closed doors. The Iranians contacted the Home Office. They wanted Abbas Yazdi's records, seized 4 years earlier in the Norwegian investigation.
The Home Office gets many requests from all over the world for help in fighting crime and bringing people to justice. But this request from Iran came at a time when moderates and reformists, like former President Rafsanjani, were criticizing the hardline government. And it was looking for evidence of corruption linked to his family.
The Home Office referred Iran's request to the Serious Fraud Office, who began sending Mr. Yazdi's documents to Iran, crucially without warning him. Those decisions are now being questioned.
I think Mr. Yazdi's case shines a light on a very murky area of British justice. We seem to have had a request for assistance given to the Home Office, who then handed it over to the Serious Fraud Office, who say it's not for them to think one way or the other, it's just for them to open their filing cabinets and hand over the materials.
The SFO letter is showing that they pass all the materials from Abbas' computer to Iranian side. Images taken from...
Image taken from Dell Dimension, that's his computer.
Later, Atena Yazdi would discover just how many of her husband's records the SFO sent to Iran.
It's a lot.
So it looks like that's 5 hard drive images.
Yes.
And do we know how many documents?
As I know, it was over 20,000 pages.
And the documents were sent in several batches over a 5-year period.
Some might say, you know, it was right that his documents came out. That's the kind of murky world he inhabited.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of murky world that we inhabit. And the fact that Mr. Yazdi may or may not have been involved in corruption would provide, in my view, no justification whatsoever for the British cooperating with a foreign law enforcement agency that has no respect for the rule of law and which probably was acting out of political motivation.
Abbas Yazdi soon heard rumours from Iran. His documents were being used to investigate him over the disputed Crescent deal.
He found out his information is passing to Iran, and he thought it's from Norwegian, so he tried to warn them that he's worried for his life and other people's life.
Mr. Yazdi contacted his Norwegian lawyer again to find out if fraud investigators here had passed his private records to Iran. Mr. Schatz realized just how high the stakes were.
He was afraid of being attacked. He was afraid of being hurt. He was afraid, worst case, of being killed.
He said that to you?
Yes. Oh, yes. He was afraid of his life.
The Norwegian fraud investigators confirmed they had not given Iran any of Mr. Yazdi's sensitive documents seized in London. But the UK authorities were dealing with Iran. A British lawyer instructed by the Iranians met Serious Fraud Office officials to discuss what Iran had told them was an investigation involving serious crime. The SFO trawled through Mr. Yazdi's records for information about his international business dealings.
All his computers record all the documents. It was continuing. Every time they could collect something, they would pass it to Iran.
The Serious Fraud Office even allowed an Iranian judge to sift through Mr. Yazdi's documents in their offices. Foreign officials can be given access to the SFO for research before making a formal request for material. But this visit has raised some eyebrows.
I don't recall when I was DPP having meetings with Iranian officials in my office, but I would hope that in conducting those sorts of meetings, British law enforcement officials would be extremely circumspect with representatives of a state like Iran.
Mr. Ahmadinejad was re-elected in 2009. Opposition protests were brutally put down. There were show trials and executions, overseen by a judiciary firmly in the grip of the hardliners.
I think the events of 2009 finally persuaded many countries in the West that this was a out-and-out repressive government that really was unwilling to compromise even with its own internal dissidents.
But even after the British embassy in Tehran was attacked in 2011 and diplomatic staff recalled, the secret flow of Mr. Yazdi's documents continued.
At the time, the UK didn't have any relationship with Iran. They even closed the embassies. But under the table, they did these things.
Abbas Yazdi would never have discovered the British were passing his documents to Iran, but for that long-running but obscure case over the disputed Crescent gas deal.
After 8 years of legal wrangling, the Iranians suddenly produced copies of some of Mr. Yazdi's documents.
He was very, very upset. He was shocked. He came home and he was almost shouting, and he said, how could they do that? They passed even the information about kids at school, the family car, and everything.
In London, lawyers for Crescent wrote to the SFO, warning of the dangers of passing information to Iran. But they couldn't get any information. According to an SFO letter we've seen, at this critical moment, they sent another batch of Mr. Yazdi's records to Iran, after they'd been warned of the dangers.
They seem to be kind of falling over themselves to be as helpful as possible, indeed handing over, on the face of it, more documents than the Iranians were even asking for. So it did seem like a very kind of cosy relationship seemed to have developed.
The SFO even sent a copy of Mr. Yazdi's computer contacts book to Iran.
I know 2 people are missing and 2 are in prison related to information SFO passed to Iran.
Crescent now instructed legal heavyweight Ken MacDonald to intervene on Mr. Yazdi's behalf.
So what happened when you contacted the Serious Fraud Office?
It was clear from what the SFO told me that the Home Office had sanctioned this and that this had been done at the request of the Home Office. And I also understood that, that this had been going on for some time.
Ken MacDonald wasn't satisfied and kept warning of the dangers. In Iran, last year's presidential election campaign was now underway. Moderates were challenging the hardliners.
It was a very fragile moment. No one knew quite who was up and who was down. So I think the Rafsanjani family's position within Iranian politics was highly unstable at this time.
For hardliners alleging Mehdi Rafsanjani to be corrupt, Abbas Yazdi's documents on their past dealings may have been key.
They couldn't prove many accusations against Mehdi, so they needed this information, I think, because of that again.
Back in England, Ken MacDonald was now urgently seeking a meeting with the Home Secretary, Theresa May. He stressed Mr. Yazdi was in danger.
Did you get an answer at all from the Home Secretary herself at the top of all of this?
No, I didn't.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, obviously, I was hoping to see the Home Secretary. I thought this was a serious case, a serious issue. And she's a very busy woman, and perhaps was too busy. But I was hoping to have a conversation with her, and unfortunately, that didn't happen.
In Dubai, on the very day Ken MacDonald was chasing the Home Secretary, Abbas Yazdi was driving to an office block. He'd decided to give evidence by video link in the Crescent case to clear his name. The Iranians were using Mr. Yazdi's documents to allege corruption in the deal. He and Crescent both denied it.
I must leave the premises at a certain time. It's a security concern of mine.
After 3 hours, Mr. Yazdi insisted he must leave. He was clearly concerned for his safety.
I've been subject to numerous threats.
He got warning from Iran, from his well-connected friends in Iran. They are preparing to come and kidnap you. He thought he has time to prepare, to arrange everything, and go out of Dubai.
We've discovered that a flat had been rented several months before in Deira, Dubai's Iranian quarter. It was used as a base for members of Iran's intelligence services to spy on Mr. Yazdi. The day after he gave his testimony, 3 men set out from Deira towards his office. Mr. Yazdi had gone there as normal. He was preparing to give more evidence the next day. Everything here is just as it was. As the kidnappers closed in, Mr. Yazdi phoned his wife.
He said, I'm very tired, I'm coming home. He wanted to be relaxed at home and to get ready and prepared for Wednesday, the rest of testimony.
Abbas Yazdi used the back stairs from his office to reach the underground car park. The 3 men were waiting in the shadows. They bundled Mr. Yazdi into his own car and drove up the ramp and out into the evening rush hour traffic. The car was registered passing through a motorway toll gate, heading to Sharjah, the port adjacent to Dubai. There, Mr. Yazdi was put into another vehicle, his car abandoned.
Both his mobile phones, they were switched off. I tried again and again, and then I was getting worried.
Mrs. Yazdi alerted the Dubai security services.
It was a terrible night. Whole night I was on the phone.
Just before dawn, a witness saw Mr. Yazdi being taken aboard a boat in Sharjah, piloted by an Iranian captain. It set sail across the Gulf towards Iran, as Mrs. Yazdi had warned Dubai's authorities.
I said, these people, I believe they kidnap him and they're going to take him to Iran.
As the Dubai police began to investigate, Ken MacDonald heard back from the Home Office. The decision to send the documents had been sanctioned at the top by a minister.
The ministerial decision was that the Iranians were engaged in a legitimate criminal investigation, that there were no human rights implications in sending information about Mr. Yazdi to that particular law enforcement agency. It wasn't a reason that I regarded as being supportable or defensible, but that was the reason.
2 months later, British police told Atena Yazdi the Foreign Office had new information.
The officer said, we believe your husband has been killed during the abduction. I asked, do you have any more information, any proof, any evidence? And he said, no. That's the only thing we have.
There's been no further news about Mr. Yazdi. His wife, meanwhile, has discovered the most worrying piece of information the UK gave Iran: his office address in Dubai.
This is the place they abducted Abbas from.
So the British authorities gave the Iranians the actual address where they could find your husband?
Exactly. And that's terrible.
Last month, the Dubai security services arrested 3 Iranians, caught trying to dispose of Mr. Yazdi's wallet, credit cards and passport. But then, another bizarre twist.
It's now emerged that a few days after the Dubai police arrested the 3 Iranians, the leader of the gang, a man who apparently worked for Iran's intelligence agencies, was found dead in custody.
We were hopeful that they have the main guy and they can ask him and find out what happened to Abbas. It was so bad. They had the main person, the main key, and they couldn't use it.
Mr. Yazdi was seized a few days after a new, more moderate president was elected in Iran, but before he took office. So was the kidnap a last throw of the dice by hardliners seeking to damage their enemies? If they hadn't found what they were looking for in Mr. Yazdi's documents, did they seize him to force a confession out of him?
There are 3 sets of investigators still trying to find out what happened to Abbas Yazdi. The Dubai police, officers from Scotland Yard, and a team sent by the new Iranian government. But the question remains, what responsibility should the UK authorities bear for the disappearance of Mr. Yazdi?
I do blame SFO and I do blame UK government. They put Abbas and many other people's life in danger. And now I urge them to stand up and to find out what happened and to save him.
We can't get answers to the serious questions raised by Mr. Yazdi's case. The SFO told Panorama they would not comment and referred us to the Home Office. The Home Secretary didn't respond, and the Home Office said they couldn't confirm or deny requests for legal assistance from abroad.
So I don't think it's any good for them to stonewall. That's a ludicrous position with respect for the Home Office to be adopting. They really need to provide an explanation about what they were doing and why they were doing it. I think that this is sufficiently serious for the Home Secretary to direct her personal attention to it.
Questions are now being asked in Parliament.
When I ask questions, I'm not getting answers. We're talking about the well-being, the welfare, the safety of a British citizen. Someone, somewhere, should be saying to us, well, I made this decision because. Yeah, there should be some sort of accountability.
The new Iranian government says it's concerned about what's happened to Mr. Yazdi, but they wouldn't speak to us. So will his family ever discover the truth?
I won't give up until I find out what's happened exactly and where Abbas is. Whatever time it takes, I won't give up.
To tackle crime, the British government sometimes has to deal with unsavoury regimes. But the question raised by Abbas Yazdi's story is, should they still do so when it puts someone's life at risk?
Three years after we first started filming people living rough in the city, braving the elements hasn't got any easier, certainly not at Christmas. Swansea returned to the streets tonight at 10:40.